Today is Vietnam Veterans Day. This war and the events that took place during this war changed America. The war began when I was in elementary school. When it was time to go to college, the war was still going on. The war began under President Kennedy by sending some advisors. And over the course of the war, 4 different presidents would serve as commander-in-chief during this war. During this time, we would see the assassination of a president of the United States. We'd see the passage of a Civil Rights Act. We see President Johnson elect not to seek re-election because of the war. We'd see an assassination of the civil rights leader, Martin Luther King. The assassination of a presidential candidate and a senator of this state, Robert Kennedy. We see the election and the resignation of Richard Nixon as president. And we see the installation of Gerald Ford, the first unelected president in our nation's history. The war started with some troops that were in Vietnam to serve as advisors. As the war continued to grow and expand, the support for the war was on decline. Vietnam was the first war that ever came into our living rooms. Every night, we saw that war on television. We saw the horrors of what war really was. The words and the music of the day reflected the war and the changing attitudes. There was a line in one of the songs, "You're old enough to kill, but not old enough to vote." You don't believe in war, but what's that gun you're toting? Many felt that our country was on the eve of destruction. Protests across the nations grew. On colleges and universities across the nation, protesters took over campuses. In Ohio, National Guard units that were called to restore order resulted in 4 students being killed. Protests began to focus beyond just the political leaders, and suddenly the members of the service were becoming targets of the protests. Finally, after 11 years, more than 58,000 soldiers being lost, more than 3 million individuals serving, President Ford returned the troops home. But when they came home, they didn't have the welcome that troops normally have. They didn't hear the thank yous that troops normally heard. We're honored today to have veterans of that war. These men, like those who took up arms to free this nation and create this nation, those who took up arms to maintain this as a single nation, those that stormed the beaches on D-Day were all heroes. These men that are here in this room today and all the veterans of Vietnam were heroes, but they never received the welcome home they deserved. They were called to service by this nation, and they served admirably. The war was one in which a country became fed up with. But these men did what they were to do. So today, to these men, we say, welcome home. We say thank you for your service. May God bless each and every one of you and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. President.